Hey everyone, Paul Vojchehoske here and welcome to the channel. So today I have probably one of the most interesting and horrible stories I've ever done or came across in my 25 plus years of doing this. Now, it hit the news wire about 3 or 4 days ago. You might have already seen it. It's a sex for rent type news story. And I've seen numerous sex for rent stories over the years, but this one actually goes above and beyond. You know, typically with sex for rent, what we see is a direct quid pro quo. So the landlord tells the tenant for certain sexual favors or certain sexual acts for certain, times of the month, and they're going to reduce the rent X amount of dollars. And it's almost never in writing. It's usually kind of a wink type scenario. And then it becomes very hard to prove. But in this case, it actually was all put into writing. I got to be honest with you, when I first read this story, I really thought I was reading something from The Onion. And then I look at the source of the article, and it was Yahoo News. And then I found out it was on YouTube and news stories across the United States. So it's kind of been a big deal. So I just knew I had to comment on it. So today I'm going to be referencing the news the version of this from New York Daily Paper. And it came out a couple of days ago. And this news story is entitled, Las Vegas Landlord is Accused of Forcing Mother to Sign a Sex Contract with Him. Now, understand this, the tenant has since filed a federal lawsuit against the property manager. And a couple of things that came out of this lawsuit. The first one is the documentation that the landlord used. Now, the landlord had the tenant sign a lease agreement, but that lease agreement, the precursor was another document, and the document was entitled, it was called Direct Consent to Sexual Intercourse and or Fellatio of Cunnilingus. And that form had to be signed by the tenant before the landlord would proceed with giving her the lease agreement to lease a 4-bedroom home. And this all happened back in November of 2018. Now, the interesting thing about this particular document, this direct consent to sexual intercourse document, it had some other very interesting language included in there, things that I've never heard before, to be quite honest with you. So this is a first for me. First of all, at the top of the document, it read that the tenant was to read this legal document carefully and seek the advice of an attorney before signing. It went on to say that the tenant hereby freely gives implied consent to sequential or simultaneous sexual encounters between the respondent and the initiators, which in this case would be the landlord and the tenant. It goes on further to say that the tenant was required to swear under oath and obligation that she was not signing this document under the influence of any incapacitating intoxicant or psychoactive substances, including but not limited to alcohol, drugs, oysters, truffles, sea cucumbers, strawberries, lobsters, dark chocolate, cocaine, LSD, cannabis, or other mind-altering chemicals or substances, unquote. So it also required the tenant to confirm, and this is where it gets even more bizarre, that the tenant is confirming that she currently does not have a boyfriend, girlfriend, parent who is taller, meaner, more physically aggressive, possesses a firearm, and or is more possessive than the landlord is. That was just some of the odd language that was included in this sexual intercourse agreement. Now, as I said, the tenant ended up filing a federal lawsuit in Nevada, where all of these documents and everything came to life. He also made her sign what's called an assumption of the risk, or a hold harmless clause called a release of liability and assumption of risk. And it went on to say that if the tenant dies during any sexual act with this 80-plus-year-old property manager, that the tenant's estate could not hold the landlord or his estate liable for any damages. So evidently this landlord or manager thought he was really all that good, or he was that good in bed that he was going to kill off a young tenant in bed. I don't mean to make fun of the situation, but it's just really odd, and it's just really, I've never seen anything like this. It actually, I wonder if the landlord, or in this case, the property manager, I mean, he's 80 plus years old. I think the article said 84 years old. I wonder if there was some dementia maybe that was going on, or he had some other issues. I don't know. But in any case, she signed it. And one of the interesting things that I noticed in the comments on a lot of these news articles is, why would she sign it? Who would do such a thing? I would never sign it. What kind of person actually signs these things? And I just want to say, hold on a minute, stop. In this particular case, this was a single mom of 4 who was living week to week in a hotel with her 4 kids. She had been approved for Section 8, but as you know, Section 8 only gives you a certain amount of time, and in this case, 90 days, to find a landlord who will accept a Section 8 voucher, which is very difficult in many markets. And if you don't by the 90th day, then you lose the benefit. And you know, she has 4 kids that she's responsible for. And she found this person finally who was willing to accept a Section 8 voucher, and it was at the 11th hour. It was right up to that 90th day. Obviously, she felt like she had no choice. That was the lesser of the 2 evils. She had to sign this, otherwise she could have been homeless. She had 4 kids. So before you judge, think about that. Sometimes, you know, people do what they have to do when they're in survival mode, particularly when you have 4 kids that you're responsible for. So I'm not judging her one bit in this. And the other thing to remember, I have talked to tenants in the past that were faced with these types of situations, and a lot of times they'll sign the document, or they'll go ahead and agree to such things knowing that they're never going to perform. And in this case, she didn't. There are some other things that you have to know here. I found out through reading through the lawsuit documents that the landlord was actually a licensed property manager and also was in default. He stopped making the mortgage payments, so this property was actually getting ready to foreclose on. And so the tenant is paying her fair share of $145 to the landlord every month, plus the landlord is collecting Section 8 and cashing the checks. Then the landlord decided, probably because she wasn't performing, that her $145, her requirement or her part of the Section 8 rent, was going to be raised to $500, so she refused to pay it. So then he starts nailing her with all kinds of late fees, and then he decides that he's going to evict her for not paying the rent and the late fees. And then it says, the article says, and the court document says that at some point he withdrew the eviction, but it doesn't say why, but I'm pretty sure I know why. My guess is somebody probably said, what the hell, what's this sex for rent document that, you know, this thing can't go to court. That's my guess. But yeah, it's just a lot more than this. He was charging her extra money and anyways, and screwing Section 8 and so on and so forth. Long story short, the Department of the Real Estate Commission in Nevada got involved, did the investigation, found pretty much that all of this was true, and revoked his property management license, fined him $94,000. He can't obviously practice real estate in Nevada anymore. And then a follow-up is the tenant rightfully so, files a federal lawsuit in federal court alleging violation of the Federal Fair Housing Act, which this totally is. And honestly, I think probably this landlord given his age, that there's probably some faculty issues upstairs. I did read in one of the court documents that he's never had a history of such behavior in the past. So it's a sad situation all the way across, but I really hope that this tenant is going to win this lawsuit. So let me know what you think about this story. I'll put a link to it down below in the video comments. All right, everybody, I'll see you in the next video.